Welcome to the Human Nature Channel. I'm your host, Alex Tamsula, and what am I doing here? Well, it's Wednesday morning once again at my dad's festively functional farm garage, where you get your once-a-week party with Alex. I'm trying to keep this the best-kept secret on the internet. Let's see how long that lasts. I've got everything I need. This is my stapler. There are many like it, but this one is mine. I've got a bottle of whiteout in case I make a mistake. I've got my pointer with the magnet on the end of it. I even have a pitch pipe. This is my traveling office. A few bits of business before we get underway. A shout out to Jaden Hogue from New Zealand. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. His comments in the comments section were a special moment for me. It told me I have an international appeal. Now, I understand there are probably other viewers here from other countries, but this is the first time I got to feel social media's global reach. And Jaden likes my danger sandblasting sign. A man after my own heart. Thank you, Jaden. And Charlton, could somebody please get a message to Charlton for me? Tell him I agree with his assessment 100% that the Las Vegas shooting has something to do with Donald Trump. I'll even go so far as to say somebody was sending him a message. And maybe the I, also known in Arabic as El Ayin, wanted to see how President Trump would handle this. My guess is President Trump knows more about the Las Vegas shooting than he's letting on, and he's handling it with kid gloves. He may have no choice. So, let's get started. For those of you who are new to the Human Nature Channel and want to know a little more about me, I recommend my very first video where I go into my educational background and my work history. Video number 1 is titled, Of Course I Think I'm Kissinger, and that pretty much sums it up. I don't necessarily recommend watching videos number 2 through 4 in the Human Nature Channel, since they are early exercises in doing YouTube, and I was still trying to figure out a format I was comfortable with. Although in video number 3, titled Asia Argento, I do try to get Asia's phone number. But video number 6, entitled That's a Nice Thong, is important to me because I got a handle on how to do the video essay. Despite the title, That's a Nice Thong is about old school broadcast journalism versus activist journalism. Now, there's a popular rap star who calls himself Childish Gambino. And I don't think anybody out there seriously believes he is a Gambino. That's the name of a famous crime family, and Childish Gambino seems to be trying to generate a certain air of gangsterism for himself. That's something entertainers do when trying to create a persona. There's even a rock band out there somewhere called the Dandy Warhols. Same thing, only different. I, on the other hand, am a genuine Warhol. Or close enough for government work. In Pittsburgh, Greenfield is a neighborhood right next to Squirrel Hill. In fact, if you drove down to the south end of Squirrel Hill and crossed a bridge over the parkway, you would be in Greenfield. Greenfield sprawls a bit on the other side of the parkway. If you go down Greenfield Avenue to the light just before the railroad underpass and make a right, you are now on Saline Street. This is the street on which my mother's family lived. My grandmother Helen came to the United States from Czechoslovakia in 1913. After getting married, Mrs. Helen Rahali moved into the house on Saline Street, where she lived until she passed away in the late 1980s. We all called her Bubba, which is Czech for grandmother. It is my understanding that Andy Warhol's family, called the Warholas, actually lived next door to the Rahalis in the late 1920s and early 1930s. Andy Warhol's mother, Julia, and my grandmother were best friends. My 5 aunts and 3 uncles knew Andy when they were kids growing up. For years, when I was a pre-adolescent, I'd hear my aunts going on about Andy, a lot really. Around the age of 11, it finally dawned on me who Andy was. I said to my Aunt Helen, "This Andy you're always talking about, this is Andy Warhol, right?" She said yes, and she was rather nonchalant about it. "We all know Andy." That's when I finally got the full story about my grandmother and Julia Warhol being best friends. It turns out once a year all through the 1960s, my Aunt Helen would travel to New York City and stay at Julia's house, which I believe was next door to Andy's factory. My grandmother made the trip once or twice. When imagining my staid, buttoned-up grandmother next door to Andy's building with folks like Viva and Ultraviolet and Joe D'Alessandro wandering around, actors in Andy's porno-chic movies from the late 60s and early 70s, that kind of makes me laugh. If you ask my grandmother what she thought of Andy, she would probably say, "Good boy chick." I once held an original piece of Andy Warhol artwork in my hands. For the record, even though I'm a fan of his art, Andy wasn't a particularly nice guy. His nickname was Dracuella, a cross between Dracula and Cinderella, which, based on what I know, sounds right. He had a reputation for using people and outright treating them like dirt. But Andy did know art, inside and out. The piece of art I held was a hand-drawn watercolor cookbook with bizarre recipes like skinned calf's head in a huge glass goblet. The cookbook was large and thin and had pink covers. It looked like a giant piece of double bubble gum. Now, I could be wrong, but it looked to me as if the book had been put together from scratch, not bought in an art store. That meant Andy knew how to do bookbinding. This is what I meant by Andy knew art. I also think it's ironic Pittsburgh has the Andy Warhol Museum because I'm under the impression Andy could have given 2 shits about Pittsburgh. My Uncle Nick, the youngest in the Warhol family, once told me the Warholis and the Warholas were related. Now, I don't have any genealogical charts to back this up, but I believe the 2 families came from the same region of Czechoslovakia. They may have even known each other back in the old country. So I think I can get away with calling myself a Warhol. Pittsburgh. A very interesting place. Let's travel back in time to 1790. In 1790, Pittsburgh was still only a town, but it was a frontier town. If you were to go about 150 miles west, you would come to the state line, and that was it. Our new country's furthest edge. After that, it was just territory where the British and the French were still arguing over who owned what. What I like about Pittsburgh is it still has this frontier spirit to it. It's our heritage, it's our legacy. Then I look at Las Vegas, our sister city in grief, and I say to myself, Las Vegas is a place where the frontier spirit lives too. I'd even go so far as to say all the people drawn to the story of the Las Vegas Route 91 Harvest Festival Massacre, even if they are from different parts of the country or different parts of the world, have that frontier spirit inside them. Even with Jaden from New Zealand, you can feel that spirit coming through. It's the wavelength on which we all resonate. So Pittsburgh, more specifically for my purposes, the Squirrel Hill neighborhood. Squirrel Hill is a crossroads of the world. Lots of people from all over. And it hums with intrigue. You can have your Istanbul. I've got Squirrel Hill. And Squirrel Hill is where I met Theresa. That's my baby. The time she tricked me into driving some heroin around from one place to its destination really pissed me off. But what a gal. Theresa was a gangster. There's no other way to put it. Not only was she a bookkeeper for the mob, she could function as a gunslinger if need be. If you tried to assault her, she would pull out a knife and slice you up, which happened to the boyfriend before me. He ended up with 18 stitches. You might think women like Theresa only exist in action movies. No, Theresa was the real thing. Theresa would tell me stories about mob goings on, and honest to God, it was like stuff straight out of The Sopranos. She once described to me the steps taken to put illegal firearms on the street. You'd have a straw purchaser, some guy without a criminal record who would buy the guns. He'd turn the guns over to the people who knew what to do with them, including taking a file and removing the serial numbers, since on the street an untraceable firearm is worth more than one that can be traced. She told me how a buy would go down. Let's say you had a man who wanted to buy an untraceable firearm. He'd dress up as a maintenance man in a cap and coveralls and be carrying a toolbox. But the toolbox would be empty. He'd go to the apartment and get let in. He'd hand over his money. Then he'd break the gun down, put it in the toolbox, and out the door he'd go. And let's say James Comey was across the street on stakeout. Just a maintenance man. Nah, there's nothing going on down there. Longtime viewers to my channel will remember from my first Las Vegas shooting video, number 7, how I posed a similar situation with a possible second shooter disguised as a maintenance man. That way he could get away undetected. I got that idea from listening to Theresa. Remembering what Theresa had told me, the first thing I asked myself when I heard Stephen Paddock had 23 guns in his hotel rooms was, does this have something to do with gun running? Was this some FBI or ATF sting that got hijacked, where the bad guys never showed up because they were killed and worse guys showed up in their place? But then I saw the aftermath photos of room 135 and how the guns were strewn all over. And it seemed too chaotic to be a gun buy. Your average gun runner isn't that messy. So I kind of drifted away from that idea for a while. But with the Las Vegas shooting, my thought experiment is to see the massacre as part of a huge web, where you have webs inside of webs. The International Man of Mystery, ISIS, turmoil in Saudi Arabia, a Vegas hotel room gun buy to put weapons on the black market, make a big enough, complicated enough web as a tool for possible explanations, and who knows how many flies you'll catch. So yeah, a possible gun buy being surveilled by some U.S. intelligence outfit in the hotel, and it all goes horribly sideways. That's where I'm at now. In the evolution of my thinking, I've come full circle. And Theresa? I have a suspicion that either she knew or whoever sent her my way knew that I was a Warhol. I was Theresa's prize for a lifetime of service. Now she could say, I own a Warhol. Like I said, you can have your Istanbul. By the way, would you like to meet Theresa? I know of an hour-long video where she describes an incident of domestic abuse involving her. I'll leave a link in the notes section to it. Keep in mind, there's more to that story than she is telling. That's my baby. So, I guess the point of tonight's video, and what makes it a Las Vegas shooting video, is to tell the world that the Las Vegas shooting truth community has a Warhol who is thrown in with them. And we're going to use that to our advantage. Over a year and a half down the road from the Las Vegas Route 91 Harvest Festival massacre, and there is still an intense hunger for information and perspective. Hey, Representative Jerry Nadler, Mr. Chairman, the Las Vegas shooting truth community is here to stay. One way or another, you'll be hearing from us. Oh, and the song, The Cisco Kid by War. Have a nice day. The Cisco Kid was a friend of mine. The Cisco Kid was a friend of mine. He drank whiskey, Pancho drank the wine. He drank whiskey, Pancho drank the wine. We met down on the fort of Rio Grande. We met down on the fort of Rio Grande. Eat the salted peanuts out the can. Eat the salted peanuts out the can. The outlaws had us pinned down at the fort. The outlaws had us pinned down at the fort. Cisco came in blasting, drinking port. Hey, Cisco! Cisco came in blasting, drinking port. Yeah, 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 yeah. They rode the sunset, horse was made of steel. They rode the sunset, horse was made of steel. Chased a gringo last night through a field. Chased a gringo last night through a field. Bye. Wah, wah, wah. Ha ha ha! Cisco Kid was a friend of mine. The Cisco Kid, he was a friend of mine. The Cisco Kid was a friend of mine. The Cisco Kid was a friend of mine. Who, 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 Cisco Kid was a friend of mine. Cisco Kid, he was a friend of mine. Later,
in the new millennium and go against money and power, and it was almost like Hollywood. It was like going, it's like a movie.